I always found the mystery and absurdity of paranormal encounters fascinating. Even the thought that something you cannot see can interact with your life in a positive or negative way sends shivers down my spine. So I decided to make a video sharing 3 supposedly paranormal encounters that I found on Reddit. I have a doppelganger that I've never actually seen. Every person that has ever been close to me has seen or had a conversation with me when I wasn't around at least once. This started happening around the time I turned 13. I had an early day at school and decided to hang out at a friend's house instead of catching the bus home, stayed for a few hours and walked home. When I got into the house, I heard my mom speaking to someone upstairs, which was unusual since we were normally the only 2 people there at any given time. When I turned the corner to see what was going on, I saw her looking into the open door of my room and heard her having a conversation. Obviously confused, I asked who was over, at which point she jumped, turned around and got white in the face. At the time, she told me she was on the phone, but later she confessed that she thought I had been home since school got out and was trying to wake me up from a nap. A few years later, I got into my first serious relationship. After a few months of dating each other, I had moved into my first apartment with a few close friends. One night, while she was staying over, I was awoken and saw that she was crying. When I asked her what was wrong, she told me that she had gotten up to use the bathroom. When she came out, she saw me walking down the hallway and towards the stairs. Assuming I had just woken up from her getting out of bed and went to get a glass of water, she didn't think anything of it, until she turned the corner and saw me laying in the same spot I was in, completely asleep. Not long after that, my roommates also started having similar experiences, usually at night. This has since continued throughout every relationship and close friendship I require, to the point where it's become something that I have to disclose, while also trying to sound sane. The most troubling and confusing part about this is that I've never personally experienced it, and the only time I'm aware that it's happened is when I'm comforting someone from whatever they saw. This is a true story, and I've been kind of obsessing over what the fuck happened out there. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, without leaving out key details. My wife's uncle, let's call him Jay, bought some land just north of Spokane, Washington with a friend of the family, let's call him Kay. They got at a significant discount because a nearby aluminium smelter had polluted the ground and it was impossible to use the water beneath the ground. They had set up 2 plots and each had a camper to live in. Jay had been progressively getting paranoid and saying people were stalking him and watching him in the trees. About 3 months into living there, a man wandering through the woods there had an interaction with Jay and ended up attacking him and breaking his jaw. Upon being arrested, the man said he was overcome with the desire to see if he could kill him with a single punch. 2 months later though, Jay was murdered in his sleep, on the couch, in his camper. Kay found him and immediately ran as far away until he stopped to call the police. There were sufficient evidence of who did it, and they quickly caught the killer, who was a 90-year-old boy who said he simply wanted his bike. He beat him to death with a power tool that was lying on the floor nearby, completely bashed his brains in. Kay was completely terrified at all times to be there alone. He had moved in with a family member until 8 months later, he ended up with nowhere else to go and had to return. In constant fear, he finally convinced my pregnant wife and I to come stay with him. The second I turned off the highway, Onto the property, I was overcome with this sense of dread. There were at least 200 crows covering the dirt road up to the property. I didn't sleep whatsoever the first night. I stared into the forest, searching for the cause of my intense fear. The energy of this place was so uncomfortable, but I assumed it was simply just knowing Uncle Jay was killed here. Even the days were eerie. Never did I have a moment where I didn't feel watched here. My wife and I always had this sense of fear, especially after dark. Things sort of normalized for a while until one day Kay began bucking and feeling very lightheaded all the time. I took him to the hospital and they said he was fine, probably a flu. At this point, it was the anniversary of Jay's murder. 3 days after the date of Jay's death, Kay comes running out of his camper screaming, "I can't breathe!" waking my wife and I up, and we ran out to see what's wrong. Kay had gotten into his car and floored it, crashing into a nearby tree. I ran up and peered through the window to see the most intense and primal fear I've ever seen in someone's eyes. He was gasping and clutching his chest. Moments later, he suddenly breathed out one last time, and he was dead. We gave him CPR for like 30 minutes until EMS arrived. On July 10th, 1 year and 3 days after murder, they would say, and they were both dead. Now, it's only me and the wife, alone on the property. Every moment, living in fear and not understanding what had happened here. I don't know why we didn't leave right away. One day, I come out to get fresh water from a drum I kept for water to smell the worst smell I've ever smelled. The water container had an 1-inch opening on top, and inside the water was bits and pieces of chipmunks, like spines and heads and stuff. They didn't fall in. Something ripped them apart before putting them inside. The nights were getting worse and worse. I never saw anything, just always filled with unease and intense fear. I grew up deep in the mountains of North Idaho, with the nearest town being like 30 miles away. Fear in the woods, even at night, it's new to me. Hearing crashing and footsteps every night. One night, my wife and I returned home to having the worst feeling I've ever felt. Everything looked different. Although everything was right where we left it, nothing seemed in place. Looking around, I suddenly see this orange long-haired man cat sitting on a stump. These cat's eyes were so intense, fiery, almost glowing, but not quite. We started hearing branches snapping, pine needles crunching, seemingly from every direction. I'm still staring at this cat, almost frozen from fear. Suddenly, a voice breaks out, echoing throughout the forest.
Is anyone out there?
A little girl, I thought, but something was off. My wife yells back,
Hello? Are you okay?
The voice had changed.
Help me! Help me!
We yelled back several times, without response.
Somebody fucking help me!
The most intense, shrieking, evil-sounding voice of a woman. I'm filled with more intense fear that I can never describe, but my wife, she's overcome with the need to find this person, and she started to head off into the forest without a word. I grabbed her by the arm and told her something is not right. Why would she respond to us? She tries to break free from me to go off alone. I tell her to get into the truck and I'll grab the spotlights. We are not going on foot. We roll the windows down and shine my intensely bright LED lights throughout the forest. We slowly creep down the road, yelling back. As we get further down the road, the voice strikes out.
Please, won't anyone help?
Sounds are difficult to pin down in the woods, but this one was very close. I hit the brakes and stop immediately. We shine the lights and yell back, searching. No sign of anyone, when suddenly the voices exploded into the cabin of the vehicle as if they were standing right outside my window.
Somebody fucking help me!
Leaving my ears hurting and ringing. I hit the gas and I did not look back. Called the police when I hit the highway, and afterwards they said there was no one around. I picked up our stuff the next day and my wife gave birth the following. We never stayed there again after the baby was born. What the hell could do these things? I never even believed in paranormal things before, but I try to think of something that could have caused this, and I cannot explain it otherwise. For a decade, I was a paranormal tour guide attending famous locations. The Western State Hospital is a Kirkbride building that housed the mentally ill from 1864 to 1994. In 2007, it was privately purchased and has become a museum/historic location and ghost hunting spot. It has a most unpleasant and dark history that I've recalled to thousands of people, and it pains me to be an expert on the subject. In 2021, I retired from my position as a guide and ghost hunting vet manager under severe burnout. After all that I've experienced there, it solidified in my mind that paranormal things that defy rational explanation do indeed happen, and certain phenomena are absolutely real. Here are a couple of strange things that I've experienced in my time there. One evening, while training for a job, I was on the first floor with a couple of workers while everyone else was touring upstairs. We were just kinda killing time, quietly observing the area. Light from the outside was coming in through the window, casting on the inner hall's wall. In that light, I watched the perfect silhouette of a man from head to hip walk throughout that light from left to right. I said something, I don't remember what, and the three of us watched as an arm and hand moved into the light from the right side. I immediately ran to the room and began looking out of that window for someone outside. There was no one there. At the time, the realization that from the ground to the bottom of the window was like 7 feet didn't even occur to me. I will never forget the crisp, clear silhouette save for as long as I live. We would sometimes run experiments with a spirit box, which is a device that rapidly scans radio frequencies and is believed to be a communication device. One person would use one with noise-cancelling earbuds. Other be able to hear is the radio static and blips of every random station. When they hear a word or phrase, they are to say it out loud. One evening, my coworker and I ran one of these experiments in a notorious room where a murder in 1987 took place. For 10 minutes I sat and listened to nothing but radio static throughout the spirit box. No blips or radio, no nothing except of the static. I was starting to get bored when I heard a woman's voice say, "Evil." So I spoke up and repeated the word, "Evil." Next thing I know, my coworker is shining her flashlight in my face to get my attention. I pulled out the earbud and she was practically frantic, saying,
It's time to go, Willie. It's time to go.
So we haul us out of the room, down the hall, down the next hall to the center section before she would even tell me what happened. While I was hearing nothing but static, she said she kept hearing what sounded like someone shuffling their feet, walking around just outside the door. She said she spoke up and asked, "Whoever is out of the hallway, are they nice?" That's when I spoke out and said, "Evil." In the wee hours of another night, we figured it would be cool to see what would happen if we shut all the doors of the world. One of the doors, as I was closing it, its knob twisted in my hand and was forcibly pulled closed. I stood there for several moments, opening and closing that door, trying to replicate what happened, trying to explain it. Finally, the person with me was like,
What the hell are you on about?
it was so weird. I'd never felt an invisible force like that before. Had 3 people spend the night one night and they had thermal imaging video. They set it up, pointing it down the hall where we'd all watch on a tablet. We thought it would be interesting to leave a device at the far end of the hall that would alarm if the field around it was disturbed. As one of the dudes walked down the hall to put it there, we could see his form on thermal imaging, clearly human-shaped in colors representing heat and warmth. When he walked by one of those doorways, about 1/4 of the way down the ward, the shape of the head, neck, shoulders and upper body of a person, in colors indicating cooler temperatures, peeked out as he walked by. Like someone popped out of the room for a second and he walked by to check him out. I've never seen anything like it. I'll end this long-winded Reddit post with something that absolutely changed me, and that I still do not understand. I remember the exact night and time of these occurrences. That's how profound and somewhat unsettling they were. June 3rd and June 4th of 2017, 3:40 a.m. June 3rd, after an hour or so of hearing a female's voice, one instance even sounding like she said my name, as well as banging around, footsteps, literally running sounds on that hardwood floor towards us, I sat quietly on the floor with a group. I started to feel dizzy, lightheaded and gross. I told myself it was my imagination and that I'd be fine. A few minutes later, I started to feel this intense burning sensation on my lower back, just to the right of my spine. Again, I told myself it was all just my imagination. The burning sensation kept amping up, getting worse and worse. I told myself that I didn't want to be that guy and say anything in front of these people, you know? Finally, it got to the point where I had to say something. I asked my coworker with us if there was anything there, and she almost screamed. There, on my lower back, just to the right of my spine, was a mark that looked like a burn about 3 to 4 inches long and about 1 inch wide. Now, I'd seen other such claims made by visitors of scratch marks and the like, often writing them off, and the marks were always gone within an hour at most. I had visible marking on my back for almost a week. My nerves there, to this very day, often feel weird. Sometimes chilled, sometimes like a skin soreness, especially when I think of the experience. June 4th, same part of the building, same time of night, cause I just can't get enough, right? I noticed that my voice recorder ran out of memory, so I'm holding it in my right hand, using the flashlight in my left hand so I could see what I was doing. Suddenly, I feel a burning sensation again on the underside of my right forearm. I did a what the hell and immediately shifted my flashlight to it. The person beside me and I watched as 3 wells began to appear down my arm. Needless to say, that shit blew my mind. It is one thing to see marks like that, it is a whole other to watch it as it happens on your own skin. Like the majority of instances I've heard about, those marks were gone within 10 to 15 minutes, no lasting effects. Scared would be the wrong word, but I have not to describe my mind frame around those events. I took a week off from work after it to try and process it all, and was nervous being in that hallway for the rest of the summer. Like I said, I still don't know what to think nor believe, and I don't think I'll ever know. Though sharing these stories about the paranormal is fun for fanatics of horror like us, it is important to have in the back of our minds that anyone can post anything on the internet, and that it's not necessarily true. Despite that, hearing these stories always makes me shiver, even if there is a slight chance they're not real, and I hope they made you shiver as well.